Hey everybody, welcome. This is Garrett Sussman, the head of marketing at Grade Us. I am so sorry that I was running a little bit late today. Apparently you can only run one webinar at a time, and my colleague over at Fan Booster, Anna, was finishing up a really interesting one about Google My Business posts. She had Claire Carlisle, Crystal Tang from Uber, and Ali Margerson from White Spark, and it was really interesting because it's a social media scheduling software. Fan Booster is, and you can post on Google My Business, but as most of us know, and maybe you don't, I mean, there's going to be a summary of that webinar, but you really can't, or you really shouldn't use Google My Business posts in the same way that you would use like Facebook or Twitter for that matter. Oh, by the way, if everyone can hear me, thanks as everyone chimes in, and we'll get started shortly. Please leave a message in the question or chat. Just want to make sure that everything is crystal clear. Hope everyone is doing well, and glad that you're all joining me today. I'm really excited. Okay, fantastic, Philip. How you doing? So yeah, it was interesting. I'm actually curious before we even get started in here, since we're all in the local space and we care about our reviews. Do any of you use Google Posts? Do you have any strong feelings one way or the other? Awesome, Michael. Good to see you. Good to see you. Because it was interesting in the webinar Fan Booster, they were talking about, using Google My Posts sparingly, especially, for instance, using like the COVID update. You want to use that sparingly because apparently Ali was pointing out that if you're using a COVID post update, that it removes your post carousel from the Google My Business listing, and so then you would miss out on some of the other posts that you've done. She also pointed out, which I thought was really interesting, is this idea of Google My Business posts really being promotional, kind of offer focused. You're not trying to get followers on Google My Business posts, because a lot of times the people who are seeing your Google listing are people who are randomly searching it, people who are searching for businesses like what you offer. And are trying to find promotions or offers or just learning more about your business, as opposed to that social network where they're following to see like any sort of update, that you post, like in the same way you would do in a social capacity. So Michael says that they use Google My Business Post weekly. You believe it's a signal to Google that you are embracing Google My Business and are active, post or service related. I love that, actually. One thing that they pointed out, Michael, that I thought was really interesting was that in your the local pack, if your business or your clients are ranking, sometimes keywords that are used in your Google My Business posts could actually be surfaced as a snippet if someone's searching for something relevant on Google. So the example that Ali used there was regards to like dentists, because dental implants are much more of a revenue driver than just general cleaning. They'll do their Google business around that type of service, and then they're more likely, she feels like they're more likely to appear when someone is searching for a dentist implant near me. And because it's in their Google My Business post, that content is helping them to appear on local pack. So I think that we should probably do some really interesting studies to prove that with evidence. But anyway, today you are all here to talk Grade Us. I'm really excited. What I am going to do is I created a special resource for you to use for how to create a prospect report. A little bit of context for the Google My Business. I'm like jumping between the two. A little bit of context for the prospect report. Now, Grade Us offers a prospect report tool to help you generate leads, and I'm going to show you how to use that. However, on our roadmap, that is actually something that we are looking to update and improve upon. So knowing that there's some aspects, like, so for instance, with the Grade Us prospect report, it includes Google and Yelp and Facebook and a couple of citation sites, but it doesn't necessarily include your industry specific review sites if you're offering that to your prospects. So I'm going to give you this Google Sheets that you are more than welcome to copy and use to create your own if you want to. So without further ado, let's dive in. And at the end, I will definitely take any sorts of Q&A. So thanks everyone for spending your Thursday with me. Okay, so sharing my screen, let me make sure that that's all set. Okay, that looks good. And then we will go into full presentation mode. Beautiful. Okay, everyone see everything there? Looking sharp, and I will be able to take your questions as they come up. Okay, so in today's Grade Us office hours, we're going to talk about how to create a prospect report. So the steps to create the prospect report, what I usually recommend is you're going to want to find your prospects, which I think is something that's always important to the agencies at Grade Us, resellers and consultants, is where do we find prospects? How do you audit your prospects review portfolio? How are you going to research and identify competitors? How do you then audit the competitors and ultimately create comparisons so you can bring that back to your original prospect and show them the value of generating reviews for their business and how that would impact their business? So the first thing I want to point out is we have the Grade Us Local Client Finder. I did a tutorial about this a few months ago. It's a great tool, and as you can see here, what it does is it allows you to find potential clients based on review portfolio based on a keyword or in a certain area. So the way you find this is in your Grade Us account, you click on this question mark and you'll find the Local Client Finder. You could then put in this search bar any sort of keywords that you think are relevant to your niche or the type of client that you want and the area. It will then spit out a list of businesses based on their name, their phone number, their star rating, and then also their most recent rating, which I think is an important factor when it comes to why someone would want to consider review management. So as you go through this video, this GIF again, you can see you typing in something like dentists, near Seattle. It generates the list, which you can actually export as a CSV. And then you'll have these factors, in order to be able to pitch a cold call. So you'll have the phone number there to be able to reach out to them, highlight what their star rating is, and then point out, if they haven't had a review in 2 months or 7 months, whether they had to temporarily shut down due to COVID, getting them started with a review management plan and strategy is going to be, a great way to start up your relationship as an agency, especially if you're also offering other, local marketing types of services like content, SEO, social media. Getting them started with those reviews is something that you can show results on immediately, right away. So what I want everyone to do here is, if you're interested right now, I created this bit.ly link where you can actually get this Grade Us prospect report research audit. You can make a copy of it and start using it for yourself. Now, built into this prospect research audit spreadsheet is an example that you could then delete and create your own. So if you go to this link, it's just a bit.ly/gradeus-prospect-spreadsheet. And you don't need to access it by starting to make marks on it. Just go click on that file, click make a copy, and then you can adjust it, change up the title to remove Grade Us if you're white labeling our service, and start using this for your prospect report. So when it comes to auditing your prospects review portfolio, what I typically would recommend you do is start with a brand Google search, which we'll get into. Then, knowing the industry that you're in, identify those key industry review sites, and then start collecting your review data. So when it comes to a brand Google search, if you know the name of the prospect, type it into Google, and see what comes up, right? Makes total sense. Just see what you're working with. I usually do this in incognito, just so you can see what would come up from a general search. Then if you do it on your own Google account without incognito, you might see slightly different results. But one thing that I find that you want to pay attention to is the specific review sites listings that come up, and how is your prospect or potential client going to be perceived when someone is searching for them, right? So I think right off the bat, when you're pitching review management, being able to show your prospect what someone will see when they search their brand is a compelling argument for why they may or may not, well, they most likely will need your help, but why they do need your help. So when you do the brand Google search, I recommend making sure you get a screenshot right here. And with any sort of simple tool, you can highlight what you want them to pay attention to. So if we look at the search for Dr. Gorab, who is my personal dentist, he's fantastic. So this is almost like not the best sort of example of a potential prospect because his reviews are stellar, but by the time we get to the end of this prospect report, I will still show you action items that even a potential prospect with a great review portfolio can benefit from the service and benefit from your expertise. So as you see in this brand result, you'll see it has his website first. His website comes up second. Then you'll see his ZocDoc listing. You'll see his WebMD listing, which WebMD does have reviews, but it's actually really rare that I see a doctor who has their reviews, has many reviews in their review strategy. It is something to consider. I've never seen a review snippet, these star ratings show up on WebMD, but maybe it's because nobody is adding enough, or the actual WebMD hasn't implemented the appropriate review aggregate schema to show the stars and SERPs. Then you'll see the ShareCare, and then you'll see Care Dash. Now, one thing that I noticed is interesting, knowing the healthcare industry, you don't see the health grades listing here. So that's one thing that I see that comes to my attention. You'll notice on the reviews from the web on the Google My Business profile that they have, obviously has a Google reviews and a 5-star rating, but he has health grades down here with only one review. So right now that says to me, okay, maybe he hasn't built out his health grades. Maybe there's an opportunity there. So when you're looking at your potential prospect, keep in mind what review sites you would expect to see and what is actually showing up in their SERP. And I'm just curious from everyone here, does anybody do this when they're looking at prospects? Do you go and Google their business and just see what comes up as kind of a starting point when you start thinking about pitching to them? I'd be curious to hear what everyone says there. Yeah, Joanne says, yes, love the incognito idea. Thanks. Absolutely. I think that we always want to be cognizant when we're working in local search and local SEO that what comes up in incognito is going to be different than what comes up in personalized search. Especially, it's even trickier, and we'll get to the local 3-pack. It's even trickier when it comes to the local 3-pack and what results are suggested, because a lot of that is based on proximity. So it's important to come to the discussion with your prospects knowing that if they're not familiar with local marketing at all, they're going to be coming with it from the perspective of what they see in search. And what they see in search a lot of times is probably going to be different than what their potential customers see in search. So having that sort of the ability to explain that to your client during the prospect, I think is going to be really important. Michael agrees, always check incognito before pitching the prospect. Great recommendation. So you've got your Google brand search, you've taken a screenshot. Now just make sure we're going to hold on to that, and we're going to put that into our prospect report shortly. So as I mentioned, understand your key industry review sites. We have a ton of resources if you're ever looking to, learn about an industry, start a new industry. We've written a bunch of blog posts. If you go to our this blog post here, industry specific review management, or just go to the blog and you'll see industry specific for one of the categories. We've covered a range of different industries, whether it's real estate, and there you want to be thinking about Zillow and Trulia and Realtor.com. If it's home services, you're going to want to be thinking about Angie's List, Home Advisor, House. For the legal industry, you're going to want to be thinking about Avo. A lot of you are experts, so you already know what those review sites are. And it's going to be interesting because your prospects might be experts in one of those review sites. Like they might have a great built out listing, as you'll see with this example on one, but the other review sites, industry specific, might be an opportunity for them to grow their business. So in this example with my dentist, I went and I found his listings on ZocDoc, his listing on Yelp, his listing on Facebook, his listings on Healthgrades, and obviously we already saw his Google My Business listing. So this is where we can start collecting their data and start to understand, okay, oh, look, he has a ton of ZocDoc reviews. He's got 4.94 star rating, 108 reviews on ZocDoc. On all of these other sites, Yelp, Healthgrades, and Facebook, bupkis, minimal, right? So you can go in there to this prospect now knowing, okay, obviously he's invested a ton of ZocDoc, and there might be a reason for that. So for instance, with ZocDoc, they have incredible scheduling capabilities that allow you to gain appointments that way. So that might be what he's thinking about, but maybe he's missing out on opportunities with Healthgrades or even Yelp. Maybe he didn't think about Yelp since it's not a dentistry focused website. Does anyone in the group here have any recommendations for how they approach third-party review sites? We'll definitely love to share them out with everybody else here, but this is what I recommend. No matter the industry, is really looking at those third-party review sites and collecting the review data, because that's going to help you with your pitch if they are already an expert in or already have a ton of reviews for one of the big ones that you'd expect, like Google. So what you're then going to do is one option with GradeUs to collect your data. If you're not going to use, as I mentioned with the prospect report, it only does the majors and a few citation sites. But say you want to collect the third-party review data, what you can do is use one of your empty GradeUs listings, just clear it out, or one of your empty GradeUs seats, clear it out, and start adding in this business. And so what you can then do using your empty GradeUs seat, and if you always have one available, you can just flip it in and out. And then once it collects your initial, Google, Yelp, Facebook, then you can manually go in and add all of those listings for the individual review sites. So for example, with this dentist, what I did is I go in, I find, ZocDoc, I add ZocDoc. I find Healthgrades, I add Healthgrades. So in addition to supplement your, prospect report that you might have gotten, in addition to supplement, this report that you're going to put together, you can actually come with a GradeUs report just based on the actual reporting software that we offer, and that will just add just more insights and a better display than just a spreadsheet. But we'll see. We'll see what you think about the spreadsheet option here. So as you see here, just using GradeUs, pulling the different review sites, the individual third-party review sites, putting them in, and then ultimately going over to reporting and either generating a report or taking some screenshots and adding the report there. So once you have all of your client data, we're going to start putting this into the spreadsheet that I shared at the beginning of this presentation. So, what you'll want to do is add your client's name, as the first on the list. Then you're going to identify these four key data components for your prospect report. The ranking. Now, like for Facebook, it doesn't work. For Google, it's obvious. Do they appear in the local pack? And if not, who are the top three? And that's actually how you're going to find your competitors to base them off of. It's going to be interesting because sometimes clients or prospects might have an idea of who their competitors are, but for a lot of the reviews, I usually recommend just basing on who's showing up in the local pack. So you'll have your Yelp section, you'll have your ZocDoc. So in the example that I have, the spreadsheet, I just have industry specific review site number 1, number 2, number 3. You can go in and modify that for whatever industry that you have. So in the example that I created, I modified that to include ZocDoc and health grades. So you'll see the ranking, the number of reviews, so the quantity, the star rating, and then the most recent review. And I think the most recent review is going to be important because think about it from the perspective of the consumers. When they go in and they're checking the reviews of a business, they want to see that the business is active and actively getting 5-star reviews, over the last week, over the last couple of weeks, last month. If you haven't gotten a review since a year ago, then it's going to be hard to assume that that business is A, running properly, and B, doing well, and the type of business that you might want to solicit. So that's going to be a compelling argument for getting reviews either on Google or any of these third-party sites, because the same applies to the third-party sites, which have a ton of value for the actual driving customers to your client's business, because ultimately they're going to look, they're hyper qualified. These are people, when they're searching health grades, when they're searching ZocDoc, they're looking very specifically for a dentist. They're probably a little further down the line, or like a doctor, they're a little further down the line in the research bubble. So Roger wants to know, is it a viable strategy to enter a prospect to grade us to run reports? Would that not trigger the purchase of a seat, or did I misunderstand your strategy as I heard you describe it? So Roger, what I recommend is having a seat open just in the seats that you have, and reuse that one seat for your prospects to kind of augment the prospect reports. Now, ultimately, one of our goals with updating this feature for our agencies and resellers is to include all of the different third-party review sites. But until that comes to fruition, and we're still going to be a few months out, because ultimately we're doing our research in terms of optimizing what you would want that feature to look like, that tool for you to generate clients, and we want to make it as best as possible. Yeah, you know what, Roger, I'm fully on board with that. I think it's a value add. It helps you grow. It helps you create more valuable information for prospects. And then ultimately, I mean, if you sign that prospect as a client and they start using Grade Us, you're going to use that seat anyway, right? So my personal philosophy, and I speak for the company, is that is totally okay to, for the time being, remove that, update for a new one, and then when they become a client, then naturally set them up with their own custom seat, because at that point you're going to be focusing on review generation, and you can't really do that in the same way in a repeatable, scalable workflow for that client. So yeah, I say go for it. I say always have a seat available. We actually have a lot of agencies and resellers that will offer free trials to clients. So, you might have a set of 2 to 3 seats where you actually do set up a client, even though they're not paying you right away. You would actually be paying for that seat, but that's like an offering that you could have for your prospects. To get them on board. Maybe for a week, you set them up for a review campaign, you show them how it works, but then you're always making the argument that review management is an ongoing process. It's not let's get, 5 reviews and then we're good to go. Like, no, you always want to continue to drive new reviews to your client's business, and, to help them with their review content freshness, to help them show up in Google. I think recent reviews always impact your Google ranking. So once you've added all of your star ratings for the main client across their third-party review sites, we're going to then identify who their competitors are. So there are a couple of ways that you can do this. I was actually talking to Mike Blumenthal of Gather Up today, and what his recommendation was is the most highly volumed um, search is going to be just the general category. So that's what he would recommend. In this case, I did category and city to have a geolocation. This also kind of goes back to whether you do it in incognito or not. The tricky thing when you're generating who the competitors are is whatever you're putting in the search bar for Google, that's going to change up your competitors. Sure, like some competitors might dominate a few different search queries, but you will see a lot of variability based on proximity, based on, in this case, like with dentist Arlington being the city, you're more likely to see a competitor with the actual name of the city in the business name. And you see that a lot. And that also kind of comes back to why, a lot of businesses will keyword stuff a city into their Google My Business name. And that is technically Google My Business spam. Like if your actual business name doesn't have the city in it, technically you're not supposed to include the city in your business name just so you will rank for that term in Google. And that is something that you can actually report a business for if they're, spammy, if they're keyword stuffing their Google My Business name listing with like a city that isn't their actual business name. That breaks Google's terms and conditions. So in this case, what I did is I searched dentist, Arlington, Virginia. I saw the ones that came up. I didn't include the ad as a competitor. They're paying to play to be in there. And so that's not necessarily going to be the same sort of, factors when it comes to why you would rank in your local 3-pack. So once you have your competitors, one thing I also grab a screenshot of that. I think that's helpful for when you're making your pitch. So if you notice at the bottom of the spreadsheet that I sent out, below all of the review data, this is where I'm going to stick my screenshot of the brand SERP. And this is where I'm going to stick my Google Local Pack screenshot. So you can see here, you can update this to put in the client name and update the category that you searched and the city. I think that is going to be helpful to have that visual for your client or prospect to be able to show them what you're seeing and what other people are seeing, and that they're not in the local 3-pack, and this is what their brand SERP looks like. SERP, for those of you who aren't familiar, stands for Search Engine Results Page. I think it's also important to clarify during your prospect pitching that just getting more reviews obviously doesn't guarantee they're going to appear in the local pack. It goes back to all the different factors that impact why someone does appear, with proximity being the primary factor. Not most people are going to actually search in incognito mode. So it is important when you're pitching review management to set those expectations. So next is collecting all of the other competitor data. And this is where you start to see visually the compelling argument for why and how you can help them with review generation services. So what you'll do, and so Roger points out in doing this strategy, the 3-pack competitor search, what they do is Roger and his team runs into situations where truly crappy business, like low stars, few reviews, shows up in one of the 3-packs worse than our prospect. How do we explain that away? So what I would say is, I think it is tricky. And I think in that case, it could be a proximity issue. It could be a unexplainable factor. I would just basically say that typically that's not the results that you would see. And you're, ultimately the best practices, like we do see a lot of fluctuation with local 3-pack listings. And so a business that might be ranking like that today might go away tomorrow. Or it might just be sheer luck of the draw of proximity, business name, and a few other factors that you might not be familiar with specifically, because ultimately at the end of the day, Google is a black box. And I know it sounds a little wishy-washy when you're making the pitch, but I think that's just the cold hard facts. I think with anything SEO related, best practices and doing what's valuable to a business is ultimately going to win. But there are going to be some factors that will you know have that type of result, Roger. I think we all see it, absolutely. So try to explain that even though they're here today, I would say chances are they're not going to be there tomorrow, because we don't see a lot of those types of really crappy results for a local 3-pack. It happens, and maybe it's a lack of competition. It is a tricky one. Andres, welcome to the team. We are doing a how to create a manual prospect report. So as you can see, the way the prospect report that I set up is created is you can see visually in green who's doing well and who's not doing well. So, in this example, I would point out for, this prospect, Dr. Gorab, that if you look down at health grades, 0. 0 reviews, 0 rating, 0 recent reviews, obviously. So as a result, this is what I would consider an opportunity for review management. It looks like there aren't a ton of other competition there. So maybe if he starts with his review generation strategy and focuses a little more on health grades compared to where you see ZocDoc, where he's crushing the competition. Like nobody else is coming up on ZocDoc on him. So it's not to say to never ask for ZocDoc reviews again, because goes back to our freshness, right? Like with the Grade Us review funnel, you still probably want to have ZocDoc as an option, or maybe you remove it for like a month, but I wouldn't prioritize that one as one of the options in the review funnel. I would focus on health grades. I would continue to focus on Google. I mean, if you look at, he's got 99 reviews, which is a lot of Google reviews, but it's still significantly less. It's all relative to the competition, Andres. It's relative to Virginia Dental Center that has 395 and Arlington Dentistry by Design that has 376. It's not that it's bad. Maybe they started collecting Google reviews a lot longer. Maybe his practice is newer. But when we come to the reality of driving business, gaining attention, and hopefully ultimately appearing in the local pack, consistently driving and focusing on getting those Google reviews to have more than the competitors, I think will be a win for Dr. Gorab in the long run. And that's why we always, with Google reviews, you always want to focus on those. It's always going to drive the most traffic compared to the other websites, the other industry specific review sites. It's just that, as I mentioned earlier, industry-specific review sites have a hyper-targeted client or prospect, someone who's looking for that business, knows exactly what they're looking for, and so it makes sense to be there. As you see with health grades, yes, he might not have the same amount as Arlington Dentistry by Design, but right now he has nothing. So he's giving himself 0 chance at being selected on a health grades. And I'm sure there are a ton of users who are looking at that for dentists. Cool. So another thing that I think is valuable, and this is where you can use Grade Us, Roger, going back to putting them in as a prospect and just using it for a one-time basis, is getting the review highlights and the opportunity for improvement and including that in the prospect report. I don't think it should be all negative. I think when you're pitching a prospect, it's really important to highlight what they are doing right and some of the great reviews that you have. Yeah, what we'll do, Andres, is we'll include the video of this webinar so you can see all these steps and have all these links. And this will be up on our YouTube tomorrow that you'll be able to have access to it. But I think it's important to highlight the wins and give your prospect credit. You don't want to go into a prospect all scare tactics, all negative, all like you stink, you're not getting reviews here. Here are all your awful reviews. What are you doing with your business? Because business owners and generally any sort of marketing team are sensitive to their negative reviews and to negative sentiment. You don't just want to be told why you stink. So I would include a ton of highlights. I would almost do, 5 highlights for every 2 negatives, and you can make this section longer if you want to. So walk through what they're doing great. Oh, you got this great review on Google that says you have a great environment, you have a friendly staff, you're doing something incredibly well. Now, for the improvement opportunities, that's how I phrase this in terms of the negative reviews. I'm not even going to necessarily position this as negative reviews. I'm going to go to the business owner and say, okay, these are some opportunities to get this feedback. This is what your customers are telling you, how you can potentially improve your business. Let's take note of this. Maybe we look through your business practices and find like ways to improve it, so that when you do get a negative review like this, you're improving. You can go back to that unhappy customer, show them that you made a difference, and then hopefully ultimately they will update their review. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, my dentist, I only chose him because he had fantastic reviews. He was pretty close to me. He didn't have any negative reviews. I actually had to go to a to a dentist with negative reviews in order to find those as examples. Never use another prospect's reviews. It doesn't make any sense. But if there are no negative reviews, you don't necessarily need to have it be 1 star. It could be 3 star, and you can just identify it as, okay, well, they mentioned this one thing. Let's just be aware of it. Is this something that you've considered? How can we help improve that in terms of your prospect report? And I think that, it's also important to highlight for a lot of these businesses with prospects that you don't need a perfect 5-star rating. You just want to have, 4.3 stars and slightly higher is kind of a good benchmark to focus on. Anything 4 or higher is fine, and it's obviously something we always want to try to improve, but having a couple of 3-star or 2-star ratings with like legitimate concerns, maybe something that is outside of your control, but it's good information, it's okay. It makes your listing look more legitimate. Ultimately, it's all based on the competitors. If you go to Google Maps and you're looking at, the category in the search query and see how everyone else is doing, that's really going to be your benchmark for your prospect and how you want them to perform in terms of both rating and quantity. Andres says he looks for a 4.4 or higher is kind of his benchmark. One interesting thing, another thing, I was talking with Mike Blumenthal, he was talking about the Google review summaries, which recently they've added on mobile these cards that have third-party review summaries on your Google My Business listing for when you search for your brand. But you ever see those 3 little snippets on your Google My Business listing that get pulled out? And you seem to have like no control over those listings, those snippets. Mike has found that if you have a 4.3 approximately star rating or higher, they tend to be all positive. 4.3 and lower, for whatever reason, you'll actually see one of those be a negative, and it's really frustrating for business owners. Now, it's not hard research data. That's what generally he's seen anecdotally, looking at a ton of reviews. It was interesting. I actually left a Starbucks review a few years ago, and my review was a 5-star rating, and it was a glowing review. But because I thought it was important to highlight, one thing that wasn't ideal in the Starbucks location that I was at, I mentioned it, and for whatever reason, Google pulled that negative review snippet from my 5-star review and put it in their Google My Business listing. So, while it's not something I would be able to go to a prospect and say, okay, you need to get above a 4.3 so you can start to see, all positive review snippets in your Google My Business listing, I think it's okay to anecdotally say that and say that's a goal. And pay attention to that. That's also something that you can include in this prospect report to show their review snippets if you want to add that. So then finally, at the bottom of the prospect report, I would include an action item set. So, if in this case, Dr. Gorab has a great review portfolio. That said, there are definitely action items that you can focus on based on your star ratings, your quantity of reviews as compared to competitors, or the recency of your reviews, and whether you've had a review on a specific review site in a certain amount of time, couple weeks, a month, 3 months, as an action item on how you would approach your review strategy with them. So in this case, still had a great portfolio. I'd say let's build out your health grade profile and start asking for health grade reviews. That's top of my list for Dr. Gorab. Second, while we know you shouldn't actively generate Yelp reviews, he only had 6 Yelp reviews, 5-star rating, but only 6. So how can we get more Yelp reviews without explicitly asking for them and breaking Yelp's terms and conditions? Well, if he doesn't have them, I'd tell him add Yelp signage to the dentist office window. So putting a sticker, as Yelp allows on the window, as well as at the receptionist desks, and train your staff to, remind the customer at the end of an engagement saying, hey, find us on Yelp, find our Yelp listing. We'd really appreciate it. You're not asking for a review, but, you're kind of implying it without breaking their terms and conditions. Another interesting one, which is a little trickier for dentists and the healthcare, community in general, or businesses in general, is the idea of asking them to take a photo and post it on Yelp, because that's not a review. But what happens is if you ask the customer to take a photo, which isn't against their terms and conditions, then Yelp actually prompts them to leave a review. So it's kind of like a little workaround to get Yelp reviews without explicitly asking the customer for a review. Another action item would be start asking for Facebook recommendations. They had no Facebook recommendations on their account. I think it was like 5 over the course of a couple of years. So Facebook recommendations are huge. As your Facebook recommendations grow and you invest in your Facebook profile, you will start to see that appear on the brand page. That's the other thing you notice is you didn't see his Facebook listing appear when you searched for Dr. Gorab. So that's another opportunity. And then also Facebook does usually have the stars appear in SERPs. So you can get those star ratings if you have a lot of review recommendations on Facebook. And then finally, deprioritize ZocDoc reviews. Not necessarily like stop asking for them, but prioritize the other ones. So Roger wanted to ask before he has to run out, but when you have a prospect who is already in the 3-pack in a reasonably competitive, what is a logical argument for how we can help them? Well, Roger, I would say, if they're already doing well, there's always the recency component. There's always the compelling argument of the value of customer feedback and just asking your customers for reviews as a way to find out what they're happy about and what they're unhappy about. I think that, continuing to ask for reviews, like if the quantity isn't great, or they can always have more reviews. That's just more ways to improve your business. So maybe, for instance, they are rolling out a new service or a new product, or they're trying something out. Asking for reviews are ways for you to surface information about that service or product that they could then, continue to build or scale their business. I think that's huge. The other thing is, I would also find a variety of search queries, that keywords that are relevant to their business that maybe they're not ranking for, Roger. So like I would say go through a list of those different top keywords that they'd want to rank for, and think about those, and then think about ways. It doesn't always work, but think about how you can kind of prompt customers in the review requests to mention those aspects of your service, or those specific services that you're trying to get ranked for in the 3-pack local. I think that's a way to approach it. Andres wants to know, do you have these strategies documented? As part of, yes, we have a review management audit blog post that I will include as well. I believe, Andres, if you just Google, I think it's, I'll write in the chat, it's blog.grade.us/review management audit. It isn't as updated. I was actually planning on updating it with some of these specific strategies, but that is a pretty comprehensive, oh, it's a HTTPS, but pretty comprehensive blog post that goes through these strategies and some of these different use cases. So just to go back to the Grade Us prospect report in the meantime, we do have this available to our agency customers. And what you can do is you can put this little widget anywhere on your website, and it generates a report like this that gives this overall score, issues to work with, the reputation overview. The issue, as I mentioned, at the beginning of this, and why we're updating this prospect report tool, is that right now it only has Google, Facebook, and Yelp, and then a few industry specific sites. So you wouldn't be able to add the third-party review sites, but that's what we're excited about adding, as well as we want to update some of the graphics and then some of the other metrics that it captures. And so that's why we want to get your feedback, which we'll get to in the next section or a couple slides down. How do you recommend you research these keywords, Andres? That's a great question. What I would recommend that you do is start at a category level. Think about the business and what they're offering, and just search those big level like categories, but on a local basis. So using what do you call them? Modifiers with each of those categories. So for instance, using if it's the dentist, you could be like dental implants near me, dental cleaning near me. Augment it with the city, with the zip code, with the near me modifiers, and then just generate a list like that. It could be services, it could be products. Giovanni, that's the Yelp. That's one thing that we're working on with this, is to making this report more reliable as well, which actually leads to the major update that we've been doing with reporting, which we're actually looking for beta testers right now. So, it's funny, Michael, we're asking for feedback about that. We've gotten feedback that people don't like the score. One of the things we want to do with this prospect report is have it more modifiable by, for our customers, so you can choose what you do or don't include on it, so it's more customizable to work for you. Because if the prospect report score doesn't really work for you, then that's something that you'd be able to remove, or we may not even include in a future report. That's what we're looking for feedback on right now. So just to want to give you an idea through this video of how you can create the prospect report, under your agency account, you click that manage in the bottom left corner, you go over to brands, you click on edit, and then you click over to widgets. That's where you're actually going to be able to grab the little widget and put it on your website, and grab that code there. And then you'll be able to get your leads and prospects. I'm excited, Michael. I'm with you. We haven't updated this in a super long time, but it's something that I think drives a ton of value for selling review management. And so I want to make sure that when we do overhaul this, we make this as effective and useful as possible. So next up, here we go. So if you want to share your feedback on what you would like to see in the prospect report, I've created a little form that you can fill out. And be brutally honest of what works for you and what doesn't. We want to take everything into consideration for this update. So bit.ly/prospect report. I just left that in the chat. So feel free to take time. We'd love to hop on a call with you if you want to talk through what works for you and what doesn't. And then part of this as well is like the review gen tools, like the form filter, and how that flows into what you're looking for as a lead gen tool. So that's there. So going back to the reporting beta tester sign up, if you want to see what's coming or what's going to be available in beta testing or in reporting in general, the last office hours, Sam was on me. You can go to our YouTube channel and we walk through all of the updates for reporting. You can also send an email to our product manager, that's sam@grade.us, with the subject line beta test for reporting. Just let him know that you're interested and he can turn that on for you now. We're really excited. One of the big things that we found was going to be really important when it came to reporting was being able to show the value that Grade Us adds. So you'll see in this right corner where it says all-time totals and what you had before Grade Us. So in terms of the star rating and the number of reviews, for reporting to clients, being able to show that Grade Us is not only improving the star rating, but also improving the number of reviews that you have, we think is going to be insanely valuable for our agencies and resellers. And then being able to show your campaign performance. So, being able to show like the amount of reviews that you were sent, how that works for the click-through, and then how that ultimately works for the positive external reviews. And as you all know, it's hard to show attribution specifically for what do you call it? Like whether the review actually came from Grade Us, because once they leave the Grade Us review funnel, we can't necessarily say one-to-one that it is definitively the case unless you're looking at like the name and comparing it to your name list. But we're really excited about this report. We think it looks very designed very well. Can you beta test reporting for a single profile? Emily, yes, you would be able to. It's not there. Basically, you can adjust the URL that Sam will work with you on, so you can just see what reporting looks like for a single profile as opposed to turning it on across all of your accounts. So yeah, we're really excited. Sam has design experience himself. He designed a lot of this. I think it's very modern. It looks slick. The next step in our reporting update will be actually tying this to the emailed and PDF reports. Right now, they're still disconnected. So syncing that up, making those look really pretty, and then ultimately moving on to the prospect report. But we want to make sure the actual reporting in app looks beautiful. There's a lot of filtering capabilities that you'll be able to have. We're really excited to get your feedback on how you use it, how you would like to see it improved, and how it works for your clients. So yeah, we're obviously super excited for our reporting beta, which is in beta right now. So reach out to Sam, get it, play with it, break it, check it out, and then let us know so we can bug bash and get it ready to roll out for alpha. A couple of other updates that I want to bring to your attention is our integrations. So we do have these continually rolling out. Just recently, we rolled out a HubSpot integration, which we're super excited about. If you were in our last webinar, we said that we had Salesforce, we had MailChimp, we just rolled out HubSpot. We are next working on Constant Contact. That's in the works, and then QuickBooks is going to be after that. Just to reiterate the value of integrations, it primarily works to help you automatically send out review requests via email or text to clients in your various CRMs or email service providers. It's awesome for being able to upsell to clients because it's a sticky feature. It removes the friction of having to get them to manually update their customer lists or even update in bulk or send it to you. I do know a lot of agencies like that communication touch point, but you can still have a communication touch point with your clients without relying on them for that deliverable. I think it removes one friction point and helps Grade Us be so much more successful when it comes to ultimately generating reviews. So with any of these, you can try them out for free for 30 days. So it is an add-on feature, Michael, to your point. So you'll be able to go in, add it for 30 days for free, and then if it's what you like and you want to continue on with it, it's per month, per seat, per location add-on at, I believe it's $20 for professional, $15 for agency, and $10 for partner. So we're really excited about that. I played around with it. It works. It's really effective, and it's already improving the review generation process. And just an update with some of the great blogs that we are posting. So last month, what we cranked out is a couple of Yelp specific posts that, knowing that you can't necessarily ask for reviews on Yelp, it still is important to focus on Yelp review management. So we have a comprehensive guide on Yelp review management. We also have a guide just on optimizing your Yelp listing. One thing that I think is really interesting in that guide is that Yelp has been updating their listings with a lot of COVID related data. COVID-related attributes and features. And so I think it's important if you have clients with a Yelp profile to make sure that it's updated. One interesting thing that they're doing is they're starting to have users who use Yelp basically rate a business or let Yelp know if the business is enacting COVID policies like masks. So if you claim that your business has mask policies, but then customers are saying that you're not actually enacting those mask policies, Yelp is going to put a little tag on that listing indicating that, or indicating if you are, using it and doing what you say. So I think as a business owner, it's something that's important to pay attention to. And as an agency owner, it's something to let your clients know that that's changing and keep them updated. And then one just general reminder blog post about why you should never buy Google reviews, let alone incentivize them, kind of goes through all of those reasons that sometimes people want to. And I think what I like about this blog post article for people who are familiar with review management and know, oh, duh, yes, you should never buy Google reviews. I think the article does a good job of explaining how to have that conversation to talk with clients about why not to. So it gives you some ideas on, if a client gives you their reasons for wanting to buy reviews, you being able to kind of list out why that's just not a good idea, the potential consequences, even if all of their their competitors are obviously doing it. And then finally, 8 review response templates. We've had this post up for a while, but we've updated it with additional posts and some specific COVID-related templates on how you can address if someone leaves a negative review specifically around COVID. I realize it can be a political thing still at this point, how to potentially handle that, templates that you can personalize and use to address a specific situation, because I think it is very tricky. But I think this post was really helpful. As always, if you ever have any interesting ideas on what you would want to have us write about, let me know. Send an email, Garrett, Garrett, @grade.us. We're getting to the end here, so just another update. If you want to see any updates that we're making to the platform, like more minor ones, you can check out our changelog that we update, pretty frequently for when we need to for minor and major updates. And that is about it. Well, thank you everybody so much. Have a great rest of your day. We will see you next month, and keep your eyes peeled for a replay of the webinar. I hope this was useful. Thank you for being great as customers. Y'all are fantastic. Now go out and get some reviews. I'll check y'all later. This is Garrett signing off.